I accepted money to dance for a billionaire Arab, then he uncovered my shocking secret. Welcome back with a new real shock story. Before we start, comment and tell me which city you're watching from. At the end, don't forget to subscribe and rate it from 0 to 10. Let's enjoy the story, everyone.
It started with a simple message, a call that seemed harmless enough. I had been asked to perform at a private event, just a small dance for a wealthy client. I hesitated at first, weighing the risk against the money I desperately needed. It wasn't just about survival. It was about keeping my child fed, about paying the rent on time, about proving to myself that I could face anything life threw at me. I told myself it was just one night, one event, and then I could go back to my quiet, ordinary existence. When I arrived, the mansion was everything I had imagined wealth could be. Huge, towering walls, golden chandeliers, and the kind of people who walked through life like the world owed them something. And there he was. Him. I had heard the rumors, of course. Billionaire, rich beyond imagination, powerful, feared, admired, envied. But seeing him in person, standing there in a tailored suit, his eyes scanning the room like he owned not just the space, but everyone in it, it made my stomach twist in ways I couldn't explain. I stepped onto the stage, heart racing, and tried to focus on my movements. Every sway, every step, was calculated yet instinctive. It was all I knew, all I had learned from years of practice in quiet rooms where no one watched, where failure meant nothing except personal disappointment. But here, every eye was on me. Some looked with curiosity, some with judgment, and some I couldn't quite place. There was something in his eyes that unsettled me, something that made my pulse quicken. As the music played, I felt a strange connection, not with the crowd, but with him. He wasn't just watching my dance. He was studying it, studying me. And in that study, I sensed a mix of fascination, disbelief, and something I didn't understand yet, something that hinted at the unknown. And then I noticed the subtle glances, the quiet murmurs behind raised hands, the way the room seemed to hold its breath. Something was about to happen. I just didn't know what. After the performance, I stepped off the stage, trying to regain composure, to hide the trembling in my hands. That's when I saw the envelope tucked under my bag, unnoticed by anyone else. I had no idea it was there, and my first instinct was to ignore it. But curiosity, that relentless, impossible-to-ignore force, pulled me toward it. I picked it up, and in that moment, I felt the weight of my life shift. Inside was a secret, one that had been hidden from the world, waiting for this exact moment to be discovered. I don't know how to describe the shock that hit me. My breath caught, my chest tightened, and my mind raced 1,000 miles per second. The secret was mine, yet it wasn't. It belonged to him too, or maybe to both of us. It was as if my ordinary world had been torn open, exposing something raw and real that I hadn't expected. And in that exposure, I realized that nothing would ever be the same. The room around me continued its polite clatter, people laughing, drinking, completely unaware of the storm that had just begun to take shape. But I felt it. The electricity in the air, the tension, the invisible threads pulling us both toward a confrontation neither of us could avoid. And then his eyes met mine, not across a crowded room, but in a way that pierced through every wall I had built around myself. I saw recognition there. Shock, yes, but also something deeper, something that seemed to say, I never expected this either. I wanted to run, to hide, to tell myself it was safer to pretend nothing had happened. But deep down, I knew I couldn't. The secret, the connection, the truth that had revealed itself, it demanded attention. And so, I stayed. I faced it. And in facing it, I felt the first stirrings of something I hadn't felt in years. A sense of power, of possibility, of daring to confront a world that had always underestimated me. That night, nothing felt ordinary anymore. Every sound, every glance, every whispered word carried meaning. The dance, the envelope, the billionaire watching me. It was all a prelude, the first act of a story that would unravel in ways I couldn't yet imagine. And as I left that night, walking back through the quiet streets with the city lights flickering above, I kept asking myself, how did a single moment, one small dance, hold the power to change everything? The next morning, I woke up with the envelope still clutched in my hands, as if it had grown roots overnight. I couldn't bring myself to open it again, not yet. My mind kept replaying the night before, the dance, his gaze, the whispers, the tension hanging in the air like a storm waiting to break. It was like the world had shifted while I slept, and I was standing at the edge, unsure whether to leap or retreat. I tried to go about my day as usual, making breakfast, getting my child ready for school, answering emails. It all felt surreal. Every sound, every glance at the mailbox, every passing stranger seemed heavier somehow, as if I carried a weight no one else could see. But no matter how much I tried to push it away, the envelope called to me. That secret inside wasn't just paper and ink. It was a life, a truth, and it demanded to be acknowledged. By mid-afternoon, I could no longer resist. I sat at my tiny kitchen table, hands shaking, heart racing, and finally opened it. Inside was a stack of documents, photographs, and notes. Things that no one should have had to hide. Things that revealed struggles, injustices, and choices that could break a person in an instant. And there it was, the proof, the reality, staring back at me. It wasn't just shocking, it was transformative. I felt a surge of anger, of disbelief, of helplessness. How could anyone endure this? How could the world allow these stories to remain hidden while people lived oblivious, comfortable lives? I glanced around my apartment, the peeling paint on the walls, the worn furniture, the little toys scattered across the floor. And suddenly, I felt the fragility of my own existence, balanced precariously alongside hers, alongside all of theirs. And then I remembered him, the billionaire who had watched me dance, who had seen a glimpse of the person I had worked so hard to be invisible. I realized he too was about to face a choice. He had been drawn into this secret, whether he understood it or not, and it was only a matter of time before action, or inaction, would define him. My mind raced with possibilities, each one more frightening than the last. What would he do? Would he use this truth responsibly? Or would he let it vanish behind his power, leaving me and countless others unheard and unseen? That evening, I returned to the event in my mind, replaying every detail, the flicker of his eyes, the hesitation in his posture, the faint tightening of his jaw. I realized that beneath the confidence, the wealth, and the control, there was a vulnerability he could not hide. That vulnerability mirrored my own fear and resilience intertwined with his, for reasons I still didn't fully understand. And it was that connection, fragile yet undeniable, that held the key to what would happen next. The days that followed were a blur of preparation, nerves, and quiet determination. I rehearsed every step, every movement, knowing that the next encounter might reveal more than I was ready to face. The tension built like a storm on the horizon, unseen but unstoppable. Each glance, each movement in the crowd felt charged with possibility, each interaction a test of courage, patience, and resolve. And then the moment came. I found myself standing once again in the same room, the lights casting long shadows across polished floors, the music starting softly in the background. He was there, waiting, not in expectation, but in careful observation. And I could feel it, the weight of the secret, the tension between us, and the unspoken understanding that something monumental was about to unfold. As the first notes of music played, I felt a chill run down my spine. I knew this wasn't just a dance. This was a reckoning. And in that moment, as I moved, as I breathed, as I faced him and the crowd around, Diaz, I understood fully that nothing would ever be the same again. The world I had known, the life I had endured, and the truth I now carried, all of it was about to collide in ways I could neither predict nor escape. Every step, every glance, every subtle movement became a test, not of skill, but of courage. And as the music swelled, the tension in the room thickened. I felt it, the unmistakable pull of fate, of choices that would define both of us, and of a truth that demanded to be confronted. That night, I realized, would not just change my life, it would change his too. And what we discovered next would leave neither of us the same. The night had come again, heavier than before, as if the air itself carried the weight of what was about to happen. I stepped into the room, my heart thudding so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it. The chandeliers glimmered, casting sharp reflections on the polished floors, but nothing in the room shone brighter than the tension that hung between us. I could feel his eyes on me, not just watching, but probing, trying to understand what I already knew, that this moment would define everything. The envelope rested in my bag, its presence almost unbearable now. I pulled it out slowly, as if the world had slowed to let me confront it fully. Every page, every photograph, every note screamed a truth I had only glimpsed before. A truth that revealed not just struggle, but injustice, not just pain, but the resilience it takes to survive when the world turns its back. I felt anger, shock, and awe all at once. How could something so hidden carry so much power? How could the world be so blind? And then he stepped closer. I felt the shift in energy, the subtle tightening of his posture, the quickening of his breath. I could see it in his eyes. The same realization I had felt mirrored back at me. The secret wasn't just mine. It belonged to both of us now. And as our gazes locked, I knew that the next second's woo would change everything. The crowd was oblivious, laughing, talking, enjoying what they thought was just entertainment. But the room had shrunk for me and him. And in that shrinking, I felt every heartbeat, every tension, every unspoken question. I could see him wrestle with what to do. The conflict mirrored in the set of his shoulders, the way he hesitated, as if the truth in front of him carried more weight than he had ever known. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. This wasn't just about exposure. It was about courage, about confronting injustice head on. And then the moment hit me fully. He had seen it, understood it, and now the choice was his. Would he act? Would he retreat into his safe world of money and influence, letting the secret vanish like it had so many times before? Or would he embrace it, confront it, and allow the truth to speak loud enough that no one could ignore it? Time seemed to stretch endlessly as he moved, and I could feel the tension radiate through the room, through the crowd, through every glance and whispered word. And then he looked at me, not with judgment, not with pity, but with recognition. Recognition of what had been endured, what had been hidden, and what needed to be acknowledged. That one look, that single unspoken understanding, carried more weight than any speech, any gesture, any act of charity could ever hold. And in that heartbeat, I understood everything. The fear, the struggle, the injustice. It all converged in a single point of truth that neither of us could ignore. The secret had been revealed, and with its revelation came power. Not power of wealth, but power of awareness, of empathy, of action. And just when I thought I had grasped the magnitude of it all, the room shifted in a way that made my chest tighten. The realization that the world outside, the people unaware, would never fully understand what we had just faced. And so, in that charged, fleeting moment, I felt it. The point of no return. Nothing could ever be the same. My life, his life, the lives around us, everything had been touched by the truth we now carried. The envelope, the dance, the gaze, the unspoken acknowledgement. It was all a catalyst. And I knew, deep in my bones, that what happened next would define not just a night, but the course of both our lives. That night ended, but nothing returned to the way it had been. I walked out of that room with the envelope clutched tightly in my hands, but it felt heavier than ever, not because of the paper, but because of the truth it carried. The secret we had uncovered wasn't just mine or his. It was a reflection of countless lives, hidden struggles, and silent battles that no one seemed to notice. And I realized, in that moment, that the world I had known, the life I had endured, and the story I had carried quietly were all about to collide with something much larger than myself. As I made my way home, the city seemed different. The lights, the streets, even the people walking by, all of it seemed to hum with possibility and consequence. I thought about him, the billionaire, who had been forced to confront a reality he could never ignore. I wondered what would happen next, what choices he would make, and whether the courage I had summoned that night would ripple beyond the walls of that mansion, touching lives we would never see. I sat in my tiny apartment, the envelope open on the table, and felt a mix of fear, relief, and quiet determination. The weight of the truth was still pressing on me, but now it carried purpose. I realized that the moments we try to hide, the stories we think are ours alone, can have power far beyond what we imagine. One dance, one glance, one acknowledgement. Sometimes that's all it takes to change the course of someone's life. And maybe, just maybe, it can change more than that. I thought about the people who had laughed, ignored, or dismissed what they didn't understand. I thought about the countless invisible struggles happening every day, hidden beneath polite smiles or unnoticed glances. And I realized something that stayed with me. Courage isn't just about surviving. It's about standing up, about being seen, about letting the truth matter, even when the world prefers silence. By the time I lay down to rest, I knew I had changed. He had changed. And in that quiet, I asked myself the question that has stayed with me ever since. How many stories like ours remain hidden, waiting for someone to notice, waiting for someone to act? How many lives go unseen, unnoticed, uncelebrated? And when we finally do see them, what will we choose to do? This isn't just my story. It's a story of resilience, empathy, and awakening. A story that reminds us that the smallest moments, the smallest acts of recognition, can shine light on truths too powerful to ignore. And perhaps, if we are brave enough to see, to feel, and to act, we can change the world, one story at a time. Even after the night ended, the memory of it followed me everywhere. The envelope, the dance, the way he looked at me, it all played on a loop in my mind. I realized that what had happened wasn't just a private moment between two people. It was a spark that had the power to ignite change, to reveal truths, and to force reflection. Not just for him or for me, but for everyone who witnessed or would hear about this story. I thought about the courage it had taken to stand there, to be seen in a room full of people who judged without understanding. And I understood, finally, that true strength doesn't always look like power, or wealth, or fame. Sometimes it looks like surviving quietly, holding on, and stepping forward when the world least expects it. That night, I saw it in myself, and in him. I saw it in the way a simple dance could uncover secrets, in the way truth could pierce through walls of indifference, and in the way connection could change hearts in an instant. Over the following days, life continued, but it felt different. The envelope had been opened, the truth acknowledged, and though the world at large remained unaware, I carried the weight of it differently now. There was no longer fear, only clarity. I had been forced to confront not just the injustices around me, but the injustices within a system that let some people suffer quietly while others look away. And I knew that this story, our story, wasn't meant to stay quiet. I looked at him then, in my memory, and wondered if he had changed too. Perhaps he had. Perhaps he now understood that the world is bigger than his wealth, his control, his carefully constructed life. And perhaps, just perhaps, he realized that responsibility isn't something you inherit. It's something you earn when you choose to act on the truths you discover. And that's what stayed with me most, the knowledge that courage, honesty, and empathy are contagious. That one moment, one choice, one act of seeing and acknowledging someone's reality can ripple far beyond the immediate. And as I think about it now, I can't help but ask, how many stories are out there like mine? How many hidden truths could change everything if someone only chose to notice? And most importantly, what will we do when we finally see them? This story isn't just mine. It belongs to every person who has been overlooked, dismissed, or underestimated. It belongs to every act of bravery that goes unseen. And it belongs to anyone willing to pause, listen, and recognize the power of truth. So I tell you this, don't turn away, don't ignore. Look, feel, and act. Because sometimes, the smallest actions uncover the greatest truths and change the world in ways we never imagined.